Hey, good morning, everybody, and welcome to another Telling It Like It Is. My name is Jade Alberts, the founder of Peer Guidance. Sharing knowledge and stories is why I started Telling It Like It Is. It is live. You have any questions, plop them in there. If you're watching this after the fact on another social media channel, put your questions in there. We will answer them. I would like to thank Simply Delivery for their support. They are an Alberta-owned delivery service expanding across the province. If you need something delivered, download their app, visit their website in the comments section, or just go to their website, simply.delivery. I am excited about today's guest. This is long overdue. Patents are something that's, there's lots of mystery about them. So Trevor Prentice, the founder of the IP Link, how are you today?
I'm great. Thanks, Jade. Yeah, thanks a lot for having me.
I know we met through the rainforest, and we've had a few conversations and things like that, but I wanted to I have one shirt, and it is the actual Lego patent in 1958 up here on whatever side it is. So I was like, look at this. I have an actual shirt that meets today's discussion.
That's awesome. I did kind of notice that because I was recently I always try to find cool patent images and figures that I can sometimes use in my presentations and such. And so I just had recently come across a bunch of different toy patents, and the Lego one is one of them. So I did kind of recognize that, and I was like, oh man, that's awesome. Great shirt.
I know. So technically, hey, it works. I'm pretty excited about that.
Nice.
So I guess what we'll do here is I'll do a brief introduction, Trevor, and then we'll get after it.
Great.
So, after nearly a decade of experience managing and advising on IP, licensing, commercial agreements, and more, Trevor founded the IP Link to help fill the gap between businesses and legal services by helping them more easily prioritize, manage, and monetize their IP. Among his various entrepreneurial side projects, Trevor sells speed cubes through Rocket Cubes and sends out a weekly newsletter called The Nerdy Parent with fun strategies for intelligent parents. Trevor has a bachelor's in physics, a master's in aerospace engineering, and a certificate of innovation and entrepreneurship from the Michael G. Foster School of Business at the University of Washington. So most people, I kind of say that, okay, here's your background. It makes no sense to why you're an entrepreneur now, but kind of some of yours does make sense. So I mean, it's a subject that is talked about all the time. So how did you decide this was a career path for you?
Yeah, I'm on the entrepreneurship side. I always kind of had entrepreneurial tendencies. I like selling candy out of my locker in junior high and random stuff like that. And then, once I went to school, like you mentioned there, I did study entrepreneurship, kind of did this entrepreneurship certificate program at grad school. So almost like half an MBA. In conjunction with my technical degree, which was in aerospace engineering. And that just kind of drew me in even more. I mean, I love that science-y engineering technical stuff, but I also really enjoyed my business classes. It was sort of like a nice change. And so coming out of school, I just started trying to look for something that was at the intersection of those two things, business and science. And that's what led me to technology commercialization. So worked at the University of Alberta Technology Commercialization Office, helped researchers file patents on their technologies for many years. And that's where I sort of developed that legal experience as well.
So when you developed that, did you just think that, oh my goodness, here it is, like people need all this help? This is a job for me. This is something that I can make a career of, or was it kind of some people just coming to you?
Yeah, I mean, initially, I was really just looking for something that would sort of fill those things that I enjoyed doing, the technical side and the business side. And then, after working with more entrepreneurs over the years and at the U of A, I mean, it was a lot of researchers that were hoping to become entrepreneurs in some sense. I mean, researcher entrepreneurs are their own breed in some ways, but just working with more entrepreneurs and working with people, I realized that I really enjoy that side of it as well, and sort of helping people understand how to improve their own businesses, especially from that IP perspective. And the legal side was something that I didn't I didn't realize necessarily. Looking back now, I'm like, okay, I kind of had some legal tendencies as well. Like I remember when I was younger, I wrote an entire rule book for Capture the Flag, very intricate, because we'd play and one of my friends would always try and find some loophole. And I was like, no, it's in the rule book. So I'd be, so looking back, I'm like, wait a minute, maybe I did sort of have some like legalistic tendencies, but didn't really pursue that until this position at the U of A, where I was helping, do drafting legal agreements, negotiating legal agreements, and getting patents written and filed.
No, that is interesting. That's funny. I mean, everybody seems to relate something back to their childhood when we talk, which is awesome, and I always love that. I mean, I know there's a lot of like patents are some time of this world of unknown. So, how does a company go about filing a patent, and can you kind of explain how the process works?
Yeah, definitely. It's a world and it's a process that is relatively complex. And so, I mean, one of my philosophies in working in the IP link and even in creating the IP link is that entrepreneurs, if they're going to pursue patents, they really should build that understanding themselves, as opposed to necessarily just saying, okay, file a patent for me. I need a patent, but I don't really know. Right. So yeah, that's a great question. In terms of the process itself, I mean, the first thing that you really want to be thinking about if you're considering a patent, or if maybe even if you're not, but potentially if you should be considering a patent, if you're doing anything innovative, then the first thing you want to think about is there's this deadline. You kind of need to file a patent by, if you're going to do it at all, you want to file before you publicly release your idea, because once you publicly release, most of the patent offices around the world, and each country sort of has its own office, most of these countries will now consider your product to be publicly known, and that means you can't get a patent on it anymore. So this is a timeline that's a little bit of a chicken and an egg, or a kind of a problem for a lot of people, because patents can be expensive. And so in the early stage of their business, they aren't necessarily thinking, okay, I'm going to spend a lot of money on patents. But if they don't do that, then once they publicly release or start selling their product or marketing their product, they actually lose that opportunity to get a patent in most countries. Now, thankfully, US and Canada have a grace period of 1 year. So if you've already publicly released your idea and you're thinking, oh, shoot, what have I done? You're just hearing me say this now. You can actually go back, at least for US and Canada, you can get a patent within 1 year of that first initial public disclosure. So, I mean, definitely keep track of that deadline very closely. And still, I would say, even if you're only really worried about US or Canada, then you still want to try and file before your first public release, because it just makes the system a little better. So the other thing that's not always well understood is, you can't just pay your money, file your patent, and then you get your patent. It's more like you're paying these fees over every year over the lifetime of your patent. So you really need to, prior to getting your patent, prior to even filing your patent, you need to do a lot of prep and strategy work to make sure that patents, there's really two questions there that are the most important. One, you need to make sure patents really make sense for your business. And this isn't an easy question to answer either, because not all businesses need patents, and not all businesses should be investing in that. But then a lot should, that aren't really considering it that closely. And then the other question is, do you even have something that's likely to be accepted by the patent office? So is it, what they call patentable? And that's also another question that's not. So that type of work, you really want to do a lot of that work before your initial patent application. I say even before going to work with the lawyer, because you want to understand patents from that business perspective first. And then if all the boxes, you can check all the boxes, it still makes sense. Now you can go work with a lawyer, because that's where you start spending even more money and having the lawyer draft your patent for you and file it for you.
Again, I'm talking with Trevor Prentice, the founder of the IP Link. The iplink.com is a website. You can just click on his on the link in the comments section. It'll take you directly there. So based on that answer you just gave, and I want to file a patent. Is it a process that I can do myself? Should I even consider it doing myself, or should I what's the benefits of contacting someone like you? Is it money, simplicity, time? What are the benefits?
I mean, maybe I'm a little biased, but obviously I think there's a lot of benefits. So, but I mean, whether it's me or getting help from someone, at least in general, who really understands patents, Now there's one thing I want to distinguish here. There's sort of expertise in a couple different ways. So you definitely, I would say, need that legal expertise when the time is right. And that means, you know, I always recommend that people work with a lawyer. I am not a lawyer, to clarify. So I help my clients more with the business side of patents, developing that business strategy, answering those two questions basically that I just mentioned. So is your product likely to be accepted by the patent office if you file a patent on it? And does your business even need a patent? Does it make sense for your business to file a patent? And how are you going to use that patent as a business tool? Because that's really what it is, right? It's a business tool that ideally is bringing value to your business, and hopefully the value that it brings is, you know, greater than the cost that you're investing into the patent. So in terms of getting help, yeah, I think definitely it's a complex enough area that you should really be looking for some expert help, and ideally in both those areas. So on the legal side when it's time, but initially trying to get some expert help on the business, how to optimize your investment into patents and how to make understand the business side. And so there are a lot of good resources out there. The Canadian Intellectual Property Office has some good learning tools, you know, at least to get that initial understanding. I've got a lot of free content on my website as well. I've got a blog and a YouTube channel where I've got lots of sort of introductory stuff. How do you get started with patents? And again, more that on that business strategy side. And then obviously I've got a program that I help clients work through as well, if that makes sense. But yeah, I really think it makes a lot of sense. There's some people that really, they want to put hundreds of hours into understanding the patent process and doing all the research. But I think most entrepreneurs don't have that inclination. It's more a matter of let's find the right person to help us. But then again, on the other side, I think you really need, as a founder or an entrepreneur or business owner who's got an innovative business or an innovative product, I think you really need to understand enough about the patent process, at least, to make those decisions yourself properly, as opposed to, asking an advisor or a lawyer, because I hear a lot of sort of bad advice going around about, let's say, software patents or other things. And sometimes it's coming from smart people, but they just don't happen to be in the IP space specifically. So they are giving good advice most of the time, but then sometimes they'll just take something out of context. And it's so specific to the individual business too, because different businesses, one business might need a patent and it makes a lot of sense. Another business, they just don't have anything patentable, or their business, their price point on their product isn't going to make sense to recoup the investment into patent protection. So there's all these different reasons why you might or might not need a patent.
No, I mean, and that makes sense, right? And I think that's such a valuable point. I mean, time is something that entrepreneurs don't have. And I want to kind of expand on that point that you made about maybe getting, I guess, bad advice, misguided advice. I mean, you hear, whether it's be on Shark Tank, whether it be on Dragon's Den, tons of people getting advice, or you see them go, "Oh my God, like, I can't believe you spent $200,000 on a patent, and I did it all myself, or I hired this lawyer and paid him a huge retainer fee." So I guess, what are some of the fallacies, or maybe what's some of the truths out there of why maybe people are spending a lot of money on patents, and how can that be avoided? Oh, gone. Well, that's interesting. I would like to answer that question, but I can't. I know we're still live here, and hopefully Trevor will come back on, and when we will ask that question. The joys of having a live show is you just never know what happens. So hopefully he will come back. But I mean, to some of his points, when you're talking about patents, oh, here he is. Like I said, you just never know what happens, right? He said 180 episodes, nothing. Oh, he's gone again. Oh, well, I think it's probably something on his end. But anyways, when you're looking to file a patent, I'm going to bring him back in here now. Hopefully we'll be able to stay here. Hey, hopefully we'll stay. Can you hear me?
I can't hear you now.
No, you can't hear me?
Okay, you're back. Sorry.
All right, there we go. Well, who knows? Like we talked about before, hey, you never know what's going to happen. This is This is why you need you have those little pre-conversations. This is why you should have those patent conversations and get people to get the right advice. I said chances of something happening in our broadcast is very slim, but here's a horror story. It went down. I start to panic a bit. So when you start to see those people, the stories that I was kind of talking about, are people spending a lot of money and the dragons sitting back and going, oh my goodness. How can you avoid that? And what are some of the truths about filing and paying for patents?
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely an expensive thing to get into. And, there's various approaches to the patent process. So sometimes you can attempt to sort of reduce your initial investment into filing a patent, depending on your approach, which countries you start with, how you direct your lawyer. But yeah, there's a lot of horror stories out there. And I think there's a lot of reasons why these horror stories happen. And, one of the primary things that I see is, like I said, people don't really get enough of an understanding to ensure that they're making the right decisions up front. So maybe I'll talk a little bit about that process again. I mean, when you try to get a patent, or when you file your patent, typically what happens is people, they often just go to a lawyer and they say, hey, I need a patent. Okay, great. The lawyer starts writing their patent for them. And there's already a bit of an issue there, because there's this disconnect between exactly what the product is and what the lawyer is writing about necessarily. Not always, but in a lot of cases, there's this disconnect. So right off the bat, people are not always getting the best patent application. And it's not because of anything the lawyers are doing wrong. They're very legally focused. And so they're making sure that they write a patent that, from a legal perspective, is going to be accepted by the patent office. But patents are this interesting mix of legal, technical, and business. It's like three worlds all combined. So you need someone looking out for the technical and the business side as well. And often, that should be the founder, but they don't always understand the business or the legal side of patents as well. So there's this disconnect here. And then what can happen is they file that initial patent application that might cost, $5,000 to $10,000, maybe even $15,000. So it's certainly not a cheap thing, but the costs don't really end there. Like I kind of mentioned earlier, you end up having to continue paying over the lifetime of your patent, basically. So especially if you're wanting additional countries, you can start with just one, and then you eventually have to file in more countries. But it can actually be 3 or 4 years before the patent office actually reviews and accepts or rejects your patent. So what ends up happening in some cases is people will get their patent. They'll be all gung-ho, excited. Lawyers like, yeah, we filed an awesome patent. And they don't always say this, but again, they're very focused on the legal side. And it may be very awesome from a legal perspective, but then the patent office looks at it and they're like, oh, actually, there's some other similar technologies out there, or there's some similar patents that have been filed. So they reject the patent. And at this point, like I said, it's 3 or 4 years in. And by then you might have spent, especially if you file in 3 or 4 countries, maybe even more, now you might have invested hundreds of thousands of dollars into the patent. So this is one of and I've had people come to me after the fact saying sort of like, yeah, our patent has some rejection notices. What do we do? And I'm like, it's not at this point, you've already filed that patent. The best option, obviously, go back in time and ask me for help before you filed, but that's obviously not a possibility. So, I mean, there's some things you can do in that situation, but the better option, and hopefully a lot of your listeners or viewers are hearing this in the earlier stages of their business, and basically they can do a little bit more of that prep and strategy work up front. So again, trying to answer those questions, do we really have something patentable, and digging in from the technical perspective, not just the legal perspective, and the business perspective. So looking at other patents that might be out there, and then this also not only helps you understand whether or not your patent is likely to be accepted by the patent office, but it also helps you understand what the core part of your product is that you should be writing into the patent. So how to file your patent, how to write your patent, what to include in that patent application, all this sort of stuff that oftentimes it just kind of goes missed.
And that makes, again, I'm talking with Trevor Prentice, founder of the IP Link. Click on his website in the comment section. It'll take you directly there. I like that. I mean, we talk about reaching out, asking for help, always making sure that it doesn't matter, this relates to patents, obviously, but if you're going to hire a marketing firm, or you're going to hire somebody, or you're going to hire an employee, you check references, you do your homework, you do your time. So
Yeah.
I'm guessing maybe people should start, and maybe you can answer this. Do they spend enough time researching their patent, or do they just jump in and say, I need this, I got to phone a lawyer, jump on Google?
I think most people, well, I mean, it's complex enough that I think it just intimidates a lot of people.
Yeah.
And so, especially given some of the costs that you hear, right? Like that $10,000 cost, that's something that, and entrepreneurs are busy,
Yeah.
obviously. So they've got a to-do list like 10 miles long, and they kind of just think, oh, well, let's just put that item a little bit lower on the to-do list, right? Because that way I don't have to worry about this intimidation factor or the cost, which, I don't have 10 grand anyway. So what am I gonna do? On the cost note, there are some grants available specifically for these patent costs. So I wouldn't necessarily worry too much about that, but whether you're spending your own money or grant money, or whether you're trying to, spend the least amount that you can to get still a high quality patent, it makes a lot of sense to ensure that you're making the right investment and that you're doing it right. So yeah, like you said, doing that research to answer that question, whether or not you have something patentable. Also, you kind of alluded to this idea of making sure you're working with the right lawyer. So there certainly are a lot of bad lawyers out there, like in any profession. There's also a lot of good.
No.
Yeah, you'd be surprised to hear, but there are some lawyers. There are obviously a lot of great lawyers as well. And so, it is a matter of doing that research. And this is something that I help people with as well, especially if they become clients. I mean, to get into the weeds a little bit, one of the modules of my program is all just about, the entire module is all about how to work with lawyers efficiently and effectively. And as part of that module, I have a spreadsheet of all the lawyers I've ever worked with, and a lot of them, I have a little note there that sort of just says, don't work with these guys again, because there was something that happened. And, way back in my career, I've had a few sort of, I wouldn't necessarily say horror stories, but I've had a few situations where lawyers did some work that I hadn't really requested them to do. And then I sent the bill, without asking, and had to kind of argue and this sort of thing. So in some of those cases, I've taken those lawyers off my highly recommended lawyers list. And so now when I work with clients, I refer them to the best lawyers. And it really depends on your industry as well and your technical space, because some patent lawyers in particular they're an interesting breed because they have this technical background. Usually they've done a science degree or engineering or even a master's. And then they also go back and then do their law degree. So if you work with a lawyer that's a patent lawyer, but they don't have that background in your technical space, but maybe a different space, it's not going to be a great experience either. So you definitely need to find the right lawyer to work with. And and then ask them to do the right things as well. If you just go and say, hey, I want a patent, they're going to give you the full works, or it's going to cost a lot more, or you're going to get some things that you don't necessarily need. So it's better to try to work with them effectively and understand what you need so that you can ask for those right things. And actually it helps you get a much better patent, and it helps you keep your legal bills a little bit more manageable.
I like that. I like that you have a list there, because I always say, reach out, ask people, talk to people. Somebody has experienced something that you are just about to go through. And if they can help you avoid that, it is absolutely priceless. I mean, time, money, whatever is your most valuable resource in that section. I just wanted to touch on one quick thing that you said there before we move on. You mentioned grants. Are there a lot of grants out there, and how would a grant apply to a patent process?
I'm not a complete expert in grants, but I know there's one in particular that's available through Alberta Innovates. This is their micro voucher, and that grant can definitely be used for patent costs. So now it does. I'm always on the fence with grants, because with patents in particular, you want to move very quickly, because again, you need to file that initial patent application before you publicly release your product, or before you start selling the product, or even marketing it, depending on how much detail you're providing. So whereas grants sometimes, and this one in particular I've heard recently, is a little bit backed up. They take a while to review your application. It's also the process for applying is very involved. You need to provide a lot of detail to them in terms of like business plan and all. So it can actually slow you down to the point where you could risk. But obviously, if it's going to be a matter of there's no possible way I can file a patent because we just don't have the money, then yeah, I would definitely recommend trying to get those kinds of grants. There's another one up in Edmonton here. well, across Alberta, there are these regional innovation networks, and
Yes.
they all differ a little bit, but there's some funding that goes into those. The one in Edmonton, I'm a little more familiar with it. It does have a program called the Coach Program. Coach Program and those costs can be used for expert coaching, like myself, potentially lawyers as well. So there's some other grants out there that are available, but
No, that's good.
those are two at least.
I wasn't aware of actually grant. I mean, anytime I have a grant question, I just call up Denise at the Grant Sherpa, and she helps me out. I love her and recommend her a lot, because that whole process itself is a world of its own that we can have another discussion on.
Yeah, that's another one you definitely want to get expert help on as well, yes. And avoid all the pitfalls there.
Exactly. So what's next for yourself in the IP Link?
Yeah, so I mean, I kind of alluded to it a second ago, but in the last 6 months or so, I've been building and built out this new program that kind of takes a lot of what I'd been doing with clients before, but a lot that I've learned from working with those clients, and puts it all into sort of this one succinct program. It's like a 9-module program that now I take the majority of my clients through when they need that help. And so that I've recently launched. I'm looking forward now to continually, improving that and coming out with version 2 in the sort of short to medium term. And then, in the longer term, I mean, just continuing, I guess the vision for IP Link, generally speaking, is just continuing to bring these 3 worlds together, the legal, technical, and business world, and just hopefully, help people avoid these types of horror stories and just really get that understanding of the patent process so that they avoid these problems and get the best patent that they can get for the investment that they're able to make, and just to make the most out of their investment.
I love that. I mean, again, I said it before, and to make sure that you ask for help to make sure this process is as smooth as possible, because it is going to cost you a fair amount of money, whatever that fair amount of money is. But the importance is not wasting your money and your time during this whole process. So I think that's a very important point that I know you reiterated a few times, and I know it's resonated with me, during our half an hour conversation here.
And I mean, and there's certainly a range of approaches from that cost perspective. So, I mean, you can get your legal costs down a little bit, but the lower they get, the higher the risk tends to be. So working through, but then again, on the other hand, the more preparation and strategy work you do, the lower the risk. So did I say lower or higher before? Anyway, the less you spend on a lawyer, the higher the risk. And then the more prep and strategy work you do, the lower the risk. So sometimes you can balance that a little bit so that you're getting your legal costs a bit lower, but then you're also, prepping in a much better way. Again, I mean, I'm a little biased, obviously, but people who work through my program, they get to that point where they understand patents in a much better way from that business perspective, and then they've prepared. So I help them prepare to work with the lawyer. So that way you can actually get your legal costs down a little bit. But since you've done all the prep work, it's easier for the lawyer, and they actually appreciate it too, because now the person they're working with understands what they need, and they've done some prep work. So the lawyer can actually create a much better patent at a lower cost. So there's certainly a range there in terms of what the cost ends up being. And there's a range in terms of the quality of the patent and your likelihood of getting rejected by the patent office at the end of the day.
No, that's awesome. This has been, great advice that you've given. And again, anybody that wants to check out the IP Link, learn more about Trevor's programs, click on the website in the comments section, and it'll take you directly there. So I'm going to put a little spin on the last question. It's always the same, but I think in your situation, obviously being a patent expert, I want to say, if you had one piece of advice about starting the patent process for a small business, entrepreneur, or startup, what would that be?
I hate sticking to one thing, but okay. Let's see if I can combine 2 into 1 here. It would be definitely start thinking about it early. So like I said, there is that deadline, right? So once you publicly release your idea, your product into the world, especially at a level where when someone sees what you've published, they kind of understand how your product works, especially once you've hit that level, you've triggered the deadline. That means either you've you now are no longer able to get a patent in most countries, or you've only got a year in just those select countries. And so in terms of that, what should you be doing in terms of starting early? Getting help, getting someone who has that expertise, because you just don't know what you don't know. And so they're like for example, what I just said, that timing, right? A lot of people just don't even realize that. So they go along with their business. Okay, I'll get that patent. I'll worry about that, next month or next, whenever it comes to the top of my to-do list. But not knowing that you can really shoot yourself in the foot. And same with just jumping in and working with a lawyer and signing a retainer agreement and not doing it the right way. What you don't know can really cause you a lot of problems. And you get into this sunk cost fallacy situation where you're like, oh, I already spent 10 grand on it. I might as well spend the next 10 or the next 50 or whatever it is, and not realizing that you should have done a little bit more of that prep work up front.
I think that's a great answer. And not only does that apply for patents, but lack of preparation, lack of homework, lack of knowledge just costs money.
Yeah. And there's the hard way. You can oftentimes figure it out yourself by either trial and error, but that can be expensive and difficult or time consuming, or you can, again, get that help. And then experts can sort of tell you, oh, it sounds like in your case, this is the best way to move forward. So, and I'm happy to have those kinds of chats with anyone. Obviously, if my program's a good fit for someone, I'm going to recommend that. But if it's not, then I'm still going to, I'm happy to share a recommended lawyer that you might want to work with, or I'm happy to say, in fact, I probably say this more than most people, patents don't really make sense for you in a particular case if I'm having a chat with someone. So yeah, let me know. I'm happy to continue the conversation with anyone who wants to have that. Just get in touch with me and we'll book a call.
Perfect. I really appreciate you spending time with us, Trevor, and sharing your knowledge about patents. It's such a black hole, so to say, and people get scared about it, and rumors and horror stories and made up numbers about what it actually costs. So I think you clarified a lot today. Obviously, I love all the stuff that you share. We're in that network together around Alberta here, where I see you all the time. I know a lot of people. I've forwarded a lot of people to you that had patent questions. So to have you on and share your knowledge, I really appreciate it. So thank you for that today.
Yeah, thank you very much for having me on, because it's always fun chatting with you, and yeah, great to clarify some of those patent things to a wider audience. So thank you.
Exactly. And again, thank you for Simply Delivery. Again, they are expanding across the province, a locally owned Alberta company. Preston's doing a fantastic job. You need something delivered, let them know. It can be anything from liquor to booze to stopping at the grocery store. They just don't do restaurants. So again, Trevor, thank you very much. I look forward to our next conversation, and have yourself a great day.
You too. Thanks a lot.
Bye-bye.